sexual assault and drug use. A-lister Johnny Depp unable to find work, blacklisted by Hollywood because of these allegations. But Johnny Depp fought back inside the courtroom in Fairfax, Virginia, telling his side of the story to the jury and to the world. And in the end, the jury believed Johnny, not Amber, and Johnny literally got his reputation back. Tonight, the two lead attorneys who won this epic battle, Ben Chew and Camille Vasquez, join us live to talk about what was happening behind the scenes during the trial, what has happened in their lives in the last year, and what do they think about the incredible reaction at the courthouse and on social media as we take a look at Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard 1 year later.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. We've got a special hour ahead. It's going to be amazing. First, I have a question for you. Where were you? Where were you June 1st, 2022? You remember where you were. You know, maybe you're like in the living room, in the couch, in the kitchen, taking a peek. Maybe you're on the Court TV mobile app. But you know what you were doing, right? You know exactly what you were doing 1 year ago today. I know where I was. I was in Fairfax County, Virginia. I was sitting there in front of that courthouse. Red tie. See the red tie? You know I was wearing red. That was the day. What a day, what an experience this trial was. You know, I've covered a lot of cases through the years, and you know we cover predominantly murder trials. This case, nobody died. Nobody died. But it was like nothing we've ever seen. Because what took place inside that courthouse was two lives that were totally exposed and revealed to the public. And one man who brought this case because he wanted the world to see everything. He wanted the world to know the truth because his life had been turned upside down by allegations that he was a wife beater, an abuser. And he's like, no, I'm not. And in our country, what you can do, you can take someone to court, sue them for defamation. Virtually impossible to win, especially if you're a celebrity. But he did. He did. And to me, the amazing thing that we saw transpire there were two celebrities. He's an A-lister, she's a, I don't know, whatever lister. But they talked about and revealed things that celebrities and high-profile people always try to shield from the public. You know, their PR people always get in the way. Oh, no, no, no. You know, we got to spin it. No. But Johnny Depp wanted it all out there. And in the end, when everything was out there, the jury believed him. They didn't believe her. And he won the case, but it wasn't about money, really. Yeah, he won money, but it wasn't about money. It was about, like, listen, I'm telling the truth. I am who I am. Give me my reputation back. And it happened. It happened. And a large part of why it happened was because of two people. They had a whole team, but let's be honest. Two people, Ben Chew, Camille Vasquez, they were the winners in all of this. I mean, this was a legal battle of battles, right? Not just in marshaling the evidence, but the pretrial motions, everything that goes into getting to the courtroom itself is Herculean. But then to be able to perform and execute inside that courtroom with the arguments, the cross-examination, and what you saw here was not just, you know, the jurors that were convinced. I mean, from inside that courtroom in Fairfax County, Virginia, they convinced the world about what really happened here. It was amazing. I don't know if we'll ever have another case quite like that here on Court TV. I mean, extremely unique circumstances, but what a great job. And Ben Chew, Camille Vasquez are going to join us in just a moment. But let's do this, right? Let me go back in our little Court TV time machine and go back. And so we remember what exactly happened inside that courtroom in Depp versus Heard.
By choosing to lie about her husband for her own personal benefit, Amber Heard forever changed Mr. Depp's life and reputation.
The evidence will show that Amber did suffer domestic abuse at the hands of Johnny Depp.
But you're pretty angry with Ms. Heard, right?
When?
I wrote it down that you
about the phony pictures that were taken and put in tabloids, and about the fake narrative, and about and the way she's trying to got a fraudulent DV claim to extort and blackmail a man. Yeah, that kind of got me
pretty angry,
frustrated, confused, angry, upset. Yes.
But never did I myself reach the point of striking Miss Heard in any way, nor have I ever struck any woman.
It felt like nothing I could do, felt like nothing I could do would change the sobriety patterns, felt like nothing I could do would stand up for him, and nothing I did made him stop hitting me. I felt this pressure. He held my pubic bone, and he thought he was punching me. And I remember days just not wanting to move because I didn't know if it was broken. I didn't know if the bottle that he had inside me was broken.
Ms. Heard cannot run away from her own allegations now. You have all heard the evidence of what she alleged against Mr. Depp in 2016. And you have all heard her incredibly dramatic, over-the-top story of physical and sexual abuse. That story was a defamatory lie.
1. As to the statement appearing in the online op-ed entitled, Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. In the Washington Post online edition, quote, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change, end quote. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
It was, again, a case like no other. Let's bring in our special guest. He'll be with us the whole hour. Joining me from Washington, D.C., partner at Brown Rudnick, attorney for Johnny Depp. There he is, Ben Chew. And from Orange County, California, across the country, another partner at Brown Rudnick and attorney for Johnny Depp, Camille Vasquez. Great to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us here on this one-year anniversary of a huge verdict. Let me start here, and Ben, I hope you don't mind. We go ladies first, usually on this show.
Absolutely, no problem with that.
Okay, so Camille, how has the last year been for you?
It's been a dream. I get to do what I feel like I'm meant to do, which is represent some really interesting, amazing clients, and I get to do it with the best team here at the firm, and I feel really, really lucky.
Oh, well, give me a little more info, Camille. I want a little more info. I mean, come on. People want to know, like, you go to a restaurant, you fly on a plane, you go for a jog, you go to the gym, whatever you're doing. What's that been like?
Well, I will say that I think right at the outset of the trial, I definitely experienced a lot more attention than I was ever used to. But since then, I think things have started to calm down, which I very much appreciate because I'm a pretty private person that values my anonymity, if I have any of it left.
Oh, you have zero left. Zero.
Yeah, well, as long as, it's being utilized for the greater good, which is inspiring young women and young people that want to pursue a profession in this field that Ben and I work in, I think then, all the best.
Okay, Ben, your turn. What has the last year been like for you? I mean, that moment where both of you come out of the courthouse, I can still see it in my mind. The crowd is going wild. It's like we've won the World Series, the Super Bowl, or we just saw like the best rock concert in the world. Everybody is smiling. They're loving you. They're chasing your car down the road. That was 1 year ago. What's it been like in the last 12 months since then?
Well, Vinny, it's a great pleasure to be on, and thank you for having us on tonight. That was a surreal moment, of course. Right after the verdict came in, we were just thrilled. It did take a while to decompress from that, but Camille and I kind of regrouped. We're co-chairs of Reputation and Brand Management group of our firm, so we've really expanded our practice to go beyond just defamation and take in kind of a broader scope that goes into all facets that go to brand and reputation management. So it's individuals, it's companies, and it's been quite fascinating.
And how about the rest of your life? You know, when you're out and about in the town there, Ben?
Well, every once in a while, I'm not as recognizable as Camille, but when I put on the glasses that I wore in the trial, occasionally I'll get a recognition, and my wife gives me a hard time about that, and she says, if you want a recognition, put on the glasses I told you to wear.
That's fantastic. So what we're going to do this hour is kind of take another look at the case and some moments from the case, get a little bit of insight from you, and kind of take a look at things with you tonight. I mean, me, you two, and the folks at home. And I want to start with a moment that every time we talk about this case, my executive producer, Carrie, she's always like, yeah, we got to talk about that. This was just like the greatest moment. So let's watch this moment together. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but then afterwards we'll get a little bit of more insight about this moment from the case.
I don't hesitate, I don't wait, I just, in my head, instantly think of Kate Moss and the stairs, and I swung at him. In all of my relationship to date with Johnny, I hadn't landed a blow.
All right, give me a little bit of behind the scenes and what's going through Ben Chew's mind in that moment. And I mean, I'd like to play poker with Ben sometime, by the way. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was really put in the doghouse after that moment when I pumped my fist. Jessica Myers, another wonderful member of our team, and Camille said, "Oh, Ben, you gave it away." So I was in the doghouse, and we knew at that moment that Ms. Heard had opened the door to Kate Moss's coming to testify on rebuttal. But it really put the pressure on our team to produce Kate Moss, because otherwise the pumped fist would have gone for naught. But fortunately, she came forward and she did rebut that testimony and said, of course, what Ms. Heard described never happened and that Mr. Depp had never harmed her in any way to the contrary.
Yeah, Camille, this was fascinating, right? For folks who are watching the trial, it's rare that you see, you know, an outward expression like that from a lawyer, but this was huge to get Kate Moss in front of this jury.
It was huge. I mean, and then the fist pump scene around the world, as we dubbed it, was nerve-wracking because we didn't have her yet. We knew that the testimony would be positive and that she would deny that Mr. Depp ever laid a hand on her, let alone pushed her down any flight of stairs. We had really no idea that the story was quite as sweet as it turned out to be, which was that she slipped and fell, and he came and carried her and scooped her up and carried her back to the house where they were staying. But we didn't have her yet confirmed as a rebuttal witness. So it was a lot of pressure. But thankfully she took pity on us and said, yes, I will come and testify. And I mean, it didn't take that much convincing, but she is a very private person and has actually never testified before or since. So it was a huge deal to be able to have her come and give testimony by Zoom.
Let's take a look at that moment from the courtroom that you just described.
We were leaving the room, and Johnny left the room before I did, and there had been a rainstorm, and as I left the room, I slid down the stairs, and I hurt my back.
How did you...
And
I apologize, Ms. Moss. Please continue.
and I screamed because I was in because I didn't know what had happened to me and I was in pain, and he came running back to help me and carried me to my room and got me medical attention.
So Ben, this is an ex of Johnny's, right? Like they used to date. So that doesn't always go well inside a courtroom when you call an ex in to testify.
No, but we were very sure she really did want to testify and set the record straight, and I think it made her all the more credible that she was an ex.
So as we sit here 1 year later, Camille, and we're looking back on this experience, how did it change you as a lawyer?
Well, I think that it had a tremendous impact on the way that we storytell, and the way that is so important as trial lawyers, that you develop a story that can resonate with the jury in a way and can be impactful, and how you look at evidence and how that fits into the narrative, that the story that you are telling them. You know, we've been taught since young lawyers that the jury's never going to know your case as well as you do. And you just have to be able to tell the story in a way that's, advocacy forward, but also that's entertaining and can captivate them. And this story and the way that we told it, I think, is a masterclass in how to be an effective trial lawyer. So I think it just reinforced the importance of storytelling when it comes to being a good trial lawyer.
And I'll tell you one thing that I didn't notice, that when I first got down there in the beginning of the case, when you guys were coming out of the courtroom one day, right in the beginning, you guys were confident. And I was like, they are, because, we knew what happened over in the UK, but I was like, wow, they are confident. They know something that I don't know here. And we saw it all transpire. Ben Chew, Camille Vasquez staying with us the whole hour. We're going to take a look, folks. Don't worry. We're taking a look at that cross-examination of Amber Heard. I know you want to see that one more time. Plus, coming up next hour.
In Manchester, New Hampshire, the trial of Adam Montgomery, the father of little Harmony Montgomery, who was missing for 2 years before anyone reported her gone. He's charged with her murder and is on trial now for other charges, and we have a live report.
And then I write, yo, if it's metal, I want it.
And let me stop you right there. What does that mean? You wrote that. If it's metal, I want it. What does that mean?
Guns.
It's a case that made national headlines.
Where's your daughter so we can check on her? I have nothing to say.
But before he faces a jury for the murder of his own daughter,
Adam Montgomery will stand trial on weapons charges.
He's already got a rap sheet the length of his arm.
His estranged wife, Kayla, is expected to testify against him.
This is one of the things that we're watching very closely.
Our cameras will be inside that courtroom, bringing you every dramatic moment.
The Adam Montgomery weapons trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
Mr. Depp lost the tip of his finger after you threw a bottle at him. Isn't that right?
That is incorrect.
You're the one who assaulted someone with a bottle in Australia. Isn't that right, Miss Heard?
I didn't assault Johnny in Australia. I didn't assault Johnny ever. I couldn't.
And then after he was injured, he had to hide from you, right?
That is incorrect.
5 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms.
That is incorrect.
And you would pursue him.
That is incorrect.
They say the true test of any witness is cross-examination. Can you withstand cross-examination? And Amber Heard did not. Did not. And a big, big reason why Johnny Depp won this case, the cross-examination done by Camille Vasquez. Still with us, folks, 1 year after the verdict, Ben Chew and Camille Vasquez. Okay, so let's take a little moment here and together we'll watch some of the cross-examination of Amber Heard.
At the beginning of your cross-examination last week, I showed you an audio where you told Mr. Depp to tell the jury, tell the judge, tell the world that he is a victim of domestic abuse. Do you remember that?
That's correct.
And you testified you found it hard to believe that Mr. Depp would tell the world that he's a victim of domestic abuse, didn't you?
I said I find it hard to believe that he would do that knowing that he himself had beat me up for 5 years.
But he has told the world that he's your victim of domestic abuse, hasn't he?
Well, he started to say that only recently. He didn't make that claim up until very recently. So when we signed our divorce agreement and we signed a statement saying that neither party had ever said false claims for financial gain, it was relevant and important to me because I was the only one making the accusations. I was the only one making those claims. He wasn't doing that at the time, and he signed his name to it.
You didn't expect as many people to show up and testify on his behalf that did you?
Incorrect.
When you told this jury under oath that you never assaulted, actually, strike that, sorry, Your Honor. When you told this jury under oath that you punched Mr. Depp because you thought of Mr. Depp pushing Kate Moss down the stairs, you didn't expect Ms. Moss to agree to testify that never happened, did you?
Incorrect. I know how many people will come out of the woodwork to be in support of Johnny.
So you think Ms. Moss needs to come out of the woodwork to testify for Mr. Depp?
Everybody who was around in the 90s and the early aughts knew that rumor. I had heard that rumor from multiple people. Of course, that's what flashed through my head when my violent husband not only swung for me, but all of a sudden swung for my sister. Of course I thought of that. I did not expect her to show up or not expect her to show up. It didn't matter. It doesn't change what I believed at the time when we were on the stairs and I thought he was gonna kill my sister by pushing her down the stairs.
You told this jury under oath that Mr. Depp was aggressive and trashed a trailer in Hicksville. You didn't expect the manager of the Hicksville property, Morgan Knight, to come forward and testify that was untrue, did you?
Incorrect. I've already been through trials with this man. I know how many people will come out in support of him.
When you told this jury under oath that you had no idea that the paparazzi would be at the courthouse on May 27th, 2016, you didn't expect a TMZ employee to show up to testify that TMZ had been alerted that you would be at the courthouse and knew exactly which side of your face to take a picture of, did you?
I know how many people will come out and say whatever for him. That's his power. That's why I wrote the op-ed.
Looking a little bit like a TKO there, Camille. Take us... how you get ready for that? How do you prepare for this? This is a long cross-examination. There was so much to go through. How do you know where to focus? And how much did you have to improvise or change based upon what she was saying and how she was acting?
I mean, it takes months of preparation, and couldn't have done it without the team that we had. I mean, the most wonderful team of lawyers, paralegals, helping, supporting. And, it's something that I said to the team often as we prepared for this. I was the attorney tasked with doing the cross-examination, but this was very much our cross-examination. This was Johnny's cross-examination, and I wanted everyone to feel like they had a part in it, and they all did participate in drafting questions and topics and choosing, the topics that we were really going to start with and hit home on, and the ones we were not going to focus on for strategic reasons. So I definitely had to adapt, and the way that I prepared was by really knowing the evidence, knowing her testimony, as ever-changing as it felt like it was, and ever-evolving, because she had given a lot of testimony, both in divorce, in the UK case, in deposition in this matter. So public statements that she gave or that had been given, by press, PR people. So I felt I studied her. We really did. We studied her. We knew her answers. We knew what she was likely going to say. But she is an incredibly intelligent woman. And, she surprised me a couple of times during the cross-examination. But I think that I was able to pivot because, again, I had the support of the team that, was there with me question by question. And ready to impeach her should she deviate from previous testimony.
Let's watch another piece of all this relative to the op-ed, which was the focus of the whole claim here. Let's watch.
Then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. This is about Mr. Depp, isn't it?
No.
You wrote this in 2018, right?
Exactly.
And 2 years prior was 2016, right?
That's true.
Okay.
That's correct.
So
It's not about
May of
Johnny. It's
Ms.
about what
Heard-
happened to me
Ms.
after.
Heard, my question was May of 2016 is 2 years prior to December of 2018, correct?
That's correct.
All right. May 2016 is when you publicly accused Mr. Depp of domestic violence, right?
I got my restraining order at that time.
And you publicly accused Mr. Depp of domestic violence.
Yes, that was attached to my restraining order, so yes.
Ben, was this a shock that she was not going to admit that the op-ed was about Johnny Depp?
It was not a shock. In fact, right before the trial commenced, despite the understanding, not only that attorneys, but also the principals would not speak so as to poison the jury pool, there was an Instagram post where Ms. Heard announced to her followers that this was going to be her primary legal defense, i.e. that technically the op-ed did not name Johnny Depp specifically, but of course this was a case of defamation by implication. The fact that she didn't mention him was irrelevant. But I do think it undermined her credibility a great deal because it was obvious to everyone who read that, that the reference, and Camille did an outstanding job getting her to agree that it was in 2016, 2 years before, that was a clear reference to Mr. Depp and her first allegations of domestic violence. So I think that cost her a lot of credibility with the jury, and I think Camille drew that out in a way without being mean, just using her own words against her. I thought it was an incredibly effective way to bring that out.
Camille, do you think you were able to reveal who Amber Heard really is, and the jury and the world got to see Amber Heard for who she truly is?
Yes, and that's the only thing that was our sole purpose. Those recordings and her words were our purpose in this trial was to confront her with her own words. And that was, if we accomplished that, we knew that we would prevail, very likely prevail, because the real Amber Heard was in those recordings. The real Amber Heard was in the words that she had said during her relationship with Johnny Depp. That's who the real Amber Heard is.
Camille Vasquez-Benchus staying with us, folks. We're going to continue 1 year after Depp v. Heard. When we come back, we'll take a look at the international reaction to this trial of the year here in the United States last year.
I started hearing these stories about murder and stuff.
I'm about to be the biggest drug dealer that you can become.
Oh my God, are they starting a war with me or what?
I'm not gonna lie, it felt good to be a gangster.
She just points the gun at my face.
Boom, 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 boom.
Just shoots me.
We knew that what we were doing had consequences, but we just didn't care.
Vice on Court TV. Weeknights at 7, 6 Central. Only on Court TV.
It has been incredibly painful to relive the breakup of my relationship, to have my motives, my truth questioned, and the most traumatic and intimate details of my life with Johnny shared in court and broadcast to the entire world. I stand by my testimony, and I now place my faith in British justice.
That was Amber Heard. There were two trials involving Johnny Depp. The first one was over in the UK, and Amber Heard was not a party to that case. She was obviously an important witness, but it was Johnny Depp going after the tabloids. And in that case, Johnny Depp did not win. He didn't win that case. And we know the result's much different here in the United States. Let me bring back my guests still with me, attorneys for Johnny Depp, Ben Chew and Camille Vasquez. And joining us tonight in London, England, award-winning journalist, broadcaster, host of the Reporting Depp vs. Heard podcast, and the author of the new book that you need to read, folks, Depp v. Heard, The Unreal Story. Nick Wallace is back with us. All right, this is like big reunion night here, 1 year after the verdict. Nick, great to see you. Let me start here. What was the reaction over in London and in England and the UK to the verdict here in the United States?
Well, obviously, there were millions of people over here in the UK who were watching what was happening in Virginia. And you probably will remember that Johnny Depp actually flew to the UK shortly after the trial finished and played some gigs with Jeff Beck, who's now sadly passed on. But he was mobbed everywhere he went. There were lots of people who wanted to queue up, have their photo taken with him. The gigs were sold out. And so he was extremely popular on this side of the Atlantic, particularly with the younger people, many of whom had been watching the trial on social media.
Okay, so now you were at both trials. As you look back now on both of these, what was the difference? I know a big part of the difference is right below us, right? But what was the big difference in the two cases?
Well, the trial attorneys in the United States, Ben and Camille, were superb. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Of course, the format of the trial in the UK was very different. We had a single judge presiding, and there was some evidence that didn't appear in the UK trial, just as some evidence was excluded from the US trial. I found, it was my first experience of covering a US trial, I found it a lot more performative, I think. And of course, the jury were required to take in huge volumes of information and make decisions based on that. The judge in the UK had the opportunity to study the transcripts, spend 3 months writing his judgment. So it was a very different setup. But in this jurisdiction, Johnny Depp can be called a wife beater because the judgment went against him. And I find that fascinating because you have these two different, and I think we met on the night of the trial and on the night of the verdict and spoke on Court TV, still trying to process what this actually means. But now the whole legal action has been settled. You've got a situation where Amber Heard is saying, I'm going to continue telling my truth. But I don't quite know how or where she's going to do that unless she does that in this jurisdiction, in the United Kingdom.
Right. I mean, Ben, if she wants to speak her so-called truth in the United States, that's a little bit of a problem, isn't it?
Oh, that's a real problem. I don't think she'll be doing that. And by the way, I just wanted to clarify, you and I, Camille, Nick, who wrote a great book, we don't have our truth. There's one truth, and that was found by the jury.
Absolutely. So tell me, Nick, you wrote the book. What's the angle of the book? Do you take a look at the two scenarios? How do you dig just into the U.S. trial? What do you have in there?
Well, I had the privilege of obviously watching both trials and collecting the transcripts from both trials and then putting together the evidence that I was see, I'm lucky in that I don't have to go for a result. If you go to court, you want to get a result. Whereas if you're just reporting from it, you're looking at what's coming out of it. And for the millions of people who watched some of the trial, whether it was Virginia or whether they were seeing what was coming out of the UK, what I wanted to do was give people an opportunity to dig into things a little deeper and try and put together a narrative which explains what happened in their relationship according to the testimonies, not just of the protagonists, not just of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, but of course all the multiple witnesses, some of whom gave evidence on both sides of the Atlantic, and look at some of the contemporaneous documentary evidence and then judge that against what the various witness testimonies say, so that you build up a picture of what this relationship was like. And then, yes, I looked into the experience of reporting both trials, and I do focus a lot on Virginia because, of course, that's where the worldwide attention was this time last year. And it was a wonderful, weird ride to be part of that, or feel right in the center of the world's attention as this trial drew towards its climax.
Yeah, in this sometimes sleepy county of Fairfax. Camille, how important or significant was what happened in the UK in your preparation for what happened down in Fairfax County?
Well, I think it was incredibly significant to learn from from what happened in the UK, but we knew and appreciated the fact that these were really different cases. You know, the fact that Ms. Heard was not a party in the UK really did give her an advantage that she was not going to have in the US. And we put our faith in our motions in limine, and one of them being arguably what we said was one of the most important motions, which was that the judgment would be excluded, and would, you know, neither side could comment on the judgment in the UK, because that would be incredibly prejudicial to Mr. Depp. Should the jury hear that in another jurisdiction where Ms. Heard wasn't a party, where the witnesses were different, where you have different evidentiary laws, where you didn't have expert testimony, and it was a judge versus a jury, that, you know, he was found liable in the civil context, and you know, the son was found not liable for printing what we still hold and maintain is a defamatory article.
Ben, we heard from Nick how Johnny Depp afterwards, mobs of fans, a lot of young people wanting to be near him. What has life been like for your client Johnny Depp in the last year?
Well, I think it's been a great weight lifted off of his shoulders. I mean, it was something I believe Camille mentioned in her part of the closing, was that it was 6 years to the day when the first allegations were made, and the jury kind of pulled that weight off of his shoulders. And as you mentioned in the run-up to the show, this wasn't about money, and he ended up collecting much less than the jury found for him. It was about restoring his reputation, and I think the last year has been about, first it was about, as Nick referenced, going on tour with his great friend Jeff Beck, who tragically passed away recently, which is a great personal blow to Johnny. But I think he took great joy in doing that. I know he enjoyed doing the film in France, which was so well received at Cannes. And now I think he is going to direct Robert De Niro in a movie. So I think all systems are go for Johnny. I think he's doing great, and he deserves it.
All right, our guests are staying with us. When we come back, we're going to talk about that scene at the courthouse and the reaction on social media. Plus, coming up next hour. In Palm Beach County, Florida, a former NFL player is confronted by 4 men at his house, sent there by his estranged girlfriend. The former player ends up shooting at the men, killing one of them, and is charged with murder, but is claiming self-defense.
I was upset, and my adrenaline was running, and I said something that I didn't mean. That's the bottom line of that. I didn't mean for my brothers to do any of that.
It's a case that made national headlines.
Where's your daughter so we can check on her? I have nothing to say.
But before he faces a jury for the murder of his own daughter,
Adam Montgomery will stand trial on weapons charges.
He's already got a rap sheet the length of his arm.
His estranged wife, Kayla, is expected to testify against him.
This is one of the things that we're watching very closely.
Our cameras will be inside that courtroom, bringing you every dramatic moment.
The Adam Montgomery weapons trial. Live coverage weekday morning, only on Court TV.
Walk, do not run.
Through the maze and the brutality and the killing out here. It's been worth it to come to this Squid Game.
I think that Johnny will win.
I have a family member who's Team Amber, but I won't mention who she is.
When you cut in line, that doesn't say a word. I have offered, and she accepted, $4,000 and a wristband of my own to relinquish her place in Spot.
Hi, good morning. Good morning.
What a scene at the courthouse. Wow. Let's bring back in our guests, Ben Chew, Camille Vasquez, and Nick Wallace still with us. Let me ask you, Camille, when you were in law school, did you ever think you'd be in the middle of something quite like what happened in Fairfax County outside that courthouse?
Absolutely no. Not in my wildest dreams. I've often said I became a lawyer because there's a lot of us. And And I just never could have imagined the circus-like atmosphere that, you know, we came to court to each day. I got a little snippet of it when I was actually in the UK for the UK trial. I was there as the only representative from the US team. So I did, it's funny, I posted a picture arriving to court with all the press outside the Old Bailey. And, you know, I'll never forget that. And I think what I posted in that picture on my private social media was, what a strange way to walk into court. Well, joke's on me, because a year later, we were walking into court in Fairfax with, you know, alpacas and screaming fans and reporters from around the world, people from around the world, and just, you know, generally so supportive of our team and our client.
Nick, what do you think, comparing the scene in Fairfax versus, I guess, was it the Old Bailey? Is that where the other trial was?
It was actually the Royal Courts of Justice, but it was extraordinary to have this trial happening in central London in the middle of the pandemic. So there were lots and lots of paparazzi. And as the trial went on, you did have more members of the public coming along. And again, they were largely supportive of Johnny Depp. But it was nothing as compared to Virginia. Although I will say, and I'm sure Camille and Ben will remember, very early on in the trial, there wasn't the same attention that there was. There were a few people queuing up. There weren't any fans out the back. But as obviously the trial was televised through Court TV, you had millions of more people aware that it was happening. So as well as the sort of hardcore followers of this case, you also had members of the public who could get into the courtroom just by queuing up for a wristband. And then you saw some of the comments in the clip that you just played. By the end of it, it was turning into Squid Games with people queuing up overnight and fighting for places in the queue. So it did feel a little bit like a circus. I mean, you know, seeing Ben and Camille come out and petting the alpacas was one of the most surreal experiences I've had as a court reporter. But by the same token, that's what happens when you have a bona fide Hollywood movie star sitting in a courtroom during a trial, which is being televised for 5, 6, 7 hours a day.
Yep. Now, the other explosion was on social media, especially TikTok. Take a look.
Now, you're a lot bigger than Amber, correct? Physically?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
She's instructing Chew to wait until she says one thing, and then she's just like, go.
My dog stepped on a bee.
There was a jar.
Look what I got. I got a jar of dirt.
Judge Penny has had enough.
Ben, I'll be honest, I was excited to see the explosion on social media because, you know, being at Court TV for all these years, I just want people to pay attention and get exposed to and be interested in what happens in our system of justice. What was your take on the social media thing? Good, bad?
I thought it was good, and I think Vinny, you get a lot of the credit for generating more excitement as it went on, and it did grow as the weeks went on. As you pointed out, it was a 6-week trial, and it got bigger and bigger and more surreal. But I don't think it really affected anything inside the courtroom, but it certainly was a welcome distraction for us outside.
Camille, did anyone pay attention to what was going on either before, during, or after the trial on social media? Be honest.
On the team?
Yeah, on the team.
On the team?
Yeah.
No, and I promise, like, we really didn't have time, whether people believe it or not. I mean, we were eating, drinking, sleeping, thinking this case, and, you know, we didn't even have to worry about food because I had made sure that we were well fed because food is one of my love languages. So I had dinner catered, I had lunch catered. I didn't want us doing anything but focusing on the trial. But obviously, you know, as time went on, I think family members or friends started sending things here and there. So yeah, we definitely like found some funny clips. I'll give you an inside story. That one